Welcome back to the Masters of Materium. We're continuing to review Mirandus Recreated as we're admiring Aaelim's incredible work as he literally recreated every single deed in the game of Valheim. And today we're going to review the Village of the Farmer. So let's get into it, Grill.
Okay, here we go. Village of the Farmer. This is like a double farming hamlet and then some. So, starting with the plot map.
So the building selections on this particular deed would be pretty much optimal for what I would actually put on a Village of the Farmer. Like I would do it exactly what you're seeing here. So the idea is in the top left corner, you can see all that kind of beige color are farming plots. And next to there, you have a grain stand, which is a 5x5 bill. And the same you're seeing on the right side with all those farming plots having a simple granary. So those would be kind of your two main things to relate to farming. Now, the exact opposite you're seeing in the farming plots in the bottom left and the bottom right, in which case they're switched. So the grain stand is on one side and simple granary on the other, to kind of spread out the buildings enough so that you have optimal location for ease of access. So you need to bring something to a grain stand. A grain stand is always, nearby. You need to store something in a granary, there's always a granary nearby as well. Now, with regards to the 10 by 10s, 10 by 10 granary as well, that could potentially be switched for something like a brewery. The mill, I'm pretty convinced, given the amount of farming plots on a Village of the Farmer, that you'd likely going to need an actual mill, and just the grain stands alone probably would not be adequate. An outfitter I would definitely have on the Village of the Farmer, and would probably be the most profitable building on there. And a barn, although I prefer not to have a barn, given there's only 8 ranching plots, it may be a necessity in this case. And associated with those ranching plots as well, you have some 5x5s, you have the milking stand, you have a meat stand, and you have a simple tannery. And the reason why I went with 5x5s here is ranching is not the main focus of a Village of the Farmer, but it still exists, and that should be utilized to the most of its potential. With regards to the other 5x5s, you have a hitching post, and every deed of any significance, unless it's really close to another, will likely need a hitching post so that you can store your horse somewhere. A simple storehouse is always good for general storage. A tent so people can restore their hit points nearby if get attacked or someone gets injured venturing out of the village. And with regards to the potion stand, that could be used for several things. So on an actual farm, the main thing you'd probably be concerned with is stamina. So let's say you're producing stamina potions, that would be important. And there's also the possibility, although this hasn't been confirmed, that some ingredients for potions could potentially come from farming and, potentially even from ranching. Certainly, in historical, you have potion ingredients from animals like, Eye of Newt and Wing of Bat and all that good stuff. So that's also another possibility here, and that's been accounted for in this particular deed.
Are you saying that COVID-20 is going to be part of Mirandus? People are going to catch a new virus from the wing of the bat. But one point to discuss is that from a strategic perspective, and we talked a little bit about this in one of the previous videos on storage, and I think it could be the same thing with tents and camps and granaries. It might make more sense to utilize like simple granaries on the 5x5s and like you mentioned, reserve the 10x10s for the rarer buildings like a brewery or a bakery or so on. So what about a bakery here? Because if you're producing a lot of, different goods, raw materials, those could be potentially turned into obviously some potentially baked goods. And what about a tavern? What's your thoughts on that?
So I'm not terribly pro taverns, as you know, in general. I think they're kind of inefficient.
Let,
So
let's let's talk about that though, because you're oddly anti-tavern, so I'd love to hear your perspectives on that.
well, the main thing is there's a lot of other buildings that can provide food, but more important than that, higher tier buildings can also provide both food and rest, such as inns. So if I had a choice between a tavern and an inn, I would pick an inn 100% of the time, simply because the only other thing taverns provide is games, and games have no financial benefits. So I'm pretty anti-tavern in general. With that said, you're talking about brewery and bakery. Both of those would be excellent options. And if I were going to replace a building on what this plot map is, I would probably replace the 10 by 10 granary. And if I had a choice between a bakery and a brewery, I would put a brewery because it's the rear of the 10 by 10 buildings.
I think you could also potentially, depending on how much a mill can do, you might even need more milling. Like we don't, without some numbers, we don't really know. But this is a good layout for something that's self-contained.
And one thing that's important to note is that obviously we have our opinions and theories pre-game. And once the game launches and the real economies launch, everything's going to change, right? There's going to be certain markets that are going to be incredibly profitable. There's going to be other markets that are going to be saturated, oversaturated. You're going to see the price of those items go down. And I think that's really important to note because just like in real life, it's going to come down to supply and demand. So if things are overproduced, you'll see the price of those items drop. And if things are underproduced, you'll see the prices of those things rise. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities on building adjustments after the game launches. And Aaelim, what's your thoughts on that? Because obviously, like we're theorizing right now, but once the game launches, everything's going to change.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And not even just when the game launches, but it's quite possible and likely that tuning is an ongoing thing, which will make some things that maybe are oversaturated at one point, let's say that particular area of the game gets nerfed so that that production of that resource is greatly diminished, then it can go from being oversaturated to the most in demand or lowest quantity item. So you're going to see changes like that all the time. With that said, I still would expect the rarest of the buildings to likely have an advantage over less rare buildings. Something like the brewery, given that there's no 5x5 brewery, is the only building in the entire food chain that has no 5x5 equivalent. So if there is a rate limiting step of the entire food chain, it's probably the brewery. And if it's not the brewery, it's most likely the dairy, considering that butcheries can also supply hunting animals, potentially fishing and the like as well. So yeah, you will see changes with time for sure. However, trends tend to, at least persist in general.
Yeah, and I think that brings up just a great, call it a universal principle in investing, which is the most valuable things will be the rarest. And we created an entire point system for the buildings, for an example, and obviously things like the potion shops and the jewelry shops, and there's a few other ones that are quite limited. So it's a safe bet or a safer bet to assume that those buildings and those items will be more valuable. So that's what Aaelim's mentioning here around some of these other buildings as well. Are we ready to check out the beautiful imagery?
Absolutely. And just to touch on what you guys are talking about, just look at the changes in Spider Tank since it first came out to now. The meta has swung wildly in a lot of different directions.
Yeah, it's gone every possible way. You went from having ancients getting like 100% of everything to them getting nerfed to the point where they're pretty much equivalent with the legendaries and everything in between. So yeah, you can see those kind of changes for sure.
I mean, even pre-release, like you had the heal meta for a while, and then you had flamethrowers and shotguns and all sorts of stuff. The meta has swung around from, like I said, one end to the other, back and forth many times.
That's something we haven't talked about, which is a really interesting conversation, in my opinion, which is the meta. So obviously, if you're playing games like Call of Duty or as you just mentioned, Spider Tanks, what they're doing, which is kind of part of the game experience over time, is that they change the meta. And what does that mean? It means that the most dominant weapons are constantly changing. So you'll have, and Call of Duty does this almost on a weekly basis where they're tuning the weapons differently, and then whatever was the meta last week is no longer the meta. They'll change the recoil patterns and things like that. Do you guys expect that to happen in Mirandus? Because obviously there's going to be a ton of tuning, but in terms of the weaponry or what's going to be dominating on the hunting side, do you think you're going to be tuning weapons that way? I can see them definitely tuning the resource output from raw materials or from the farms or from the mines, but do you guys think they're going to be like changing the meta? Do you think that's important in this game, Aaelim?
I think you will see some changes to the meta. I don't think you'll see it quite as aggressive or just such huge fluctuations as you're seeing in spider tanks. Simply because let's say you have a character, and let's say you're running an all sight and you're running a full range spec, which would be optimal with an all sight. You spend all that money to build up your character. You spend potentially years building them up, and then suddenly the the rare human pit fighter starts out DPSing you. It's going to cause issues within the economy. People are not going to be happy, etc. So will you see that change? Sure. Will you see various resources sometimes get buffed, some get nerfed? I'm sure you'll see that as well. I just don't see it happening quite as to the extent as you're going to see in some of these other games where economy isn't as important.
Well, I think you queued me up perfectly there. What I was going to say is I do expect 100% that there's going to be a very dynamic economic meta. So I don't personally think that combat wise it's going to be as dynamic as a spider tank or a Call of Duty game, but economically, and this is just going to be a natural thing, you're going to see these opportunities emerge, and obviously players that are on top of that or deed owners that are on top of that will be able to maximize their earnings. And of course, Aaelim is our master of coin, so that's going to be one of his main roles is for the guild members is to look at where are the opportunities and make sure that as a guild we're dominating. So make sure you join us, mastersofmaterium.com. Are we ready to check out the beautiful imagery?
Absolutely.
Let's see it, Grill. Let's see those screenshots you got.
All right. Oh, real sexy one here. So this is the kind of, I think I label these as like foundation. You kind of see the outline of where the farming is, the house, 5x5s, 10x10s. It's kind of an interesting look. I do like these overhead shots before you build anything up. Here you can see even before you put that in, that is in the top right, you see the outer wall for the village of the farmer, and you see it's right next to the Archduke. It's kind of get an idea of how big it is. I can tell you in game, the Archduke feels absolutely massive to the point where you almost get lost. The village of the farmer still looks pretty big by comparison. This is out front. This is right through the main entrance. Kind of looking down the main alley there at the house. This is from the house looking back towards the front entrance. Some shots of the pier there, some farming, a little ranching. Got a mill off on the right. Another shot of the harbor. Shot of the moon coming up over the farm at night. That will look pretty good. And onto the house.
Yeah, so some nice screenshots there. I really like the ones with the moon, Grill. It really kind of gives a nice atmosphere to the deed. This particular deed, the house is a 20x20, and as you can see, it's pretty similar to the NFT picture on the right. Even down to the woodwork details and the location of the windows, the bottom of the windows.
Yeah,
yeah, like everything is pretty much spot on for sure. So, as close as you can within Valheim. The only thing, if you're looking at this, you're probably saying, well, the chimney's quite a bit larger. Well, the problem with the inside, to make the chimney actually functional, you need to have a certain amount of space within it, and that's kind of the smallest that you can reasonably have, such that the inside of the house doesn't get filled with smoke. So, other than that, it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I don't think you can get much better than this within the limits of the game. So I got a couple of shots from within D. Here's looking at the front door. Looking at the farmer's house. Nice wide opening. Maybe get a cow or something in there. From the back. Another kind of shot from the front. I tried a few different angles. This was a tough one to get because of the lamppost there. And some foggy shots. Got some onions growing.
I kind of like these foggy shots, to be honest with you. I like the atmosphere. Yeah, I really like this one in particular for whatever reason.
Yeah. Some turnips. It's a little tough to see the house here. And I forgot what this is. Turnip seeds? I can't remember what we're growing in this one or what those are. It's been a while since I actually did some farming in Miranda.
Could be anything, right?
Valheim. Yeah, could be anything.
I don't know myself, and I planted it. So.
Shot inside the house. So this is the wide front entrance that you saw from the front. This is kind of in the back of the room.
Of course,
got a table.
Some very crucial Christmas trees.
That's right. Christmas trees in every deed. 'Tis the season.
Yeah. The Christmas trees give you more comfort, which improves your rested buff. So very important.
Yeah.
Mr. McCarthy, you heard that? We need Christmas trees in Mirandus.
So yeah, you got a little table, some food on it. Stay cozy by the fire after a long, hard day in the fields. Here is the opposite. So this is kind of the door would be off, like kind of behind us to the left. And you got a bedroom. Oh, farmer's living large. Got a hot tub. Look at that.
Yeah, the Baron, the noble Baron, didn't even get a hot tub.
Shows you who's really doing well in Mirandus, huh? It's all about those farmers. Another little shot of the bedroom. You can kind of see the stairs going up. The portal, which you can kind of ignore because those will not be in Mirandus.
Yeah, so this is starting actually in the town of the prince, and we're going to the village of the farmer. So we've gone to each deed via a few different methods. We've gone by boats, we've gone by walking. This way here, I'm trying to show out this portal room that is what I built to easily access all the different deeds. Now, you won't be seeing portals in Mirandus, but I thought it would be useful to see how we actually typically get around in the deeds.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions, Ellen. Do you think there's going to be portals? I mean, we've been joking internally, and you might have seen one of our clickbaity thumbnails on our YouTube channel. Is that a portal? But do you think there's going to be portals? Because I actually wrote a comment in Discord or asked a question to McCarthy, which is, are there going to be kind of magical biomes where it's just very, very different? And McCarthy said, basically hinted there was going to be, but it's going to be very, very rare. So what's your expectations? Do you think there's going to be, a very rare portal once in a blue moon that will take you to some really weird place?
So I do think the game will have portals, as in portals that bring you to dungeons, maybe to different, realms, that sort of thing. What I meant specifically on these portals, you're not going to see portals that bring you from, say, one deed directly to another. Right. But as you mentioned, yeah, I very much would expect to see that sort of thing for sure.
I said there was going to be no portals in the last video, and I actually agree with you. Or maybe it was in this video. I can't remember, but I agree that, yeah, there will be portals, but nothing for deed-to-deed travel. I just don't see that being a thing at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would like kill the economy for, horses and conveyors and ships and the entire game pretty much. So no, I don't see that unless they have something like Valheim has, where most things can't be transported. Like you've seen that yourself, Virtual, or if you have like some ore on you, you can't go through the portal, right? Mm-hmm. So they could make it so you only can go through a portal if you're like naked or something of that nature. But like even then, I don't see it. Yeah, like beefs.
You also have to
So-
travel to the other side of those portals to make those connections too. It's not like these portals are set up and we just port around the game. Like we still had to make it to those places to set these systems up.
Yeah. So what you're seeing in this particular image again is the billboard village of the farmer. All the details: the 20 by 20 house, the 74 farming plots, 8 ranching plots, the decorative plots. You know, you have your 12 small plots and your 4 medium plots. And here's a nice aerial view during the daytime, so you can see the entire village of the farmer. On the right there, you kind of got a glimpse of the Archduke, which will be coming as the 12th video in the series. And you see kind of like a early wharf or, you know, large dock to the east there. Coming in here, we have a hitching post. First thing you grab to hook up your horse, you have a potion stand, providing all the necessities for running the farm. So we can come to the simple storehouse to drop off any goods that we have or any crafted materials that don't fit something such as a granary. You also have a tent there for anyone who needs to recover their hit points for whatever reason they may require that service. And we're coming through the main part of town here, and the first thing we go to is our 10 by 10, which is a mill. Now in Valheim specifically, there's only one size of mill. However, in Mirandus, there will be different sizes. So to differentiate one, you know, a grain stand from a large mill to a mill, we had to do something. So in this case, I made a larger area, a raised mill, so that, you know, you have better wind flow and such, which is as good as I can. But in Mirandus, you'd expect this to be a, you know, a much larger building taking up the full space. Next, you have the outfitter, which is very, very busy. Now, something I want to say specifically about the outfitter. So in Mirandus, based on the play test that we've seen, you grow flax and you take that flax to make linen thread. And you take that linen thread, and one of the things you can do is use it to make padded armor. Specifically in Valheim, you grow flax. You take that flax, you bring it to these spinning wheel, I think is the actual name for it, and they make linen thread with the, you know, the exact same name as they have in Mirandus. And then you take this linen thread, and with it, you can make padded armor. So it's kind of an exact copy of Valheim, literally the same name and same materials of every step in the entire supply chain.
To be fair, that's probably the name of those same armors and materials in almost every MMO ever made.
So they're obviously pretty busy there. We got a nice selection of cloth-based goods. You know, we got heraldry, which can be added to our deeds. And we got some armors, and we also have the stuff for producing armor. Now here we have a simple tannery, which looks like Virtual's busy working at, and it's right across from a bread stand.
You know, one thing I've put in the Mirandus suggestion thread in the Gala Discord is, you know, give us a really deep, wide variety of crops and herbs, because economically it's going to be much, much better for everyone. You know, if there's only just a couple of types of crops, they're just going to be, you know, maximized by a few players or by mom. And it's going to be difficult for everyone else to compete. So the deeper and the wider the variety, the better. Now, my question is, with Valheim, how deep and wide are the crops and the herbs? Because just with the little bit I've played, it seems to be quite varied.
So in Valheim, there's multiple different biomes, and you can only grow certain crops in certain biomes. So a lot of what we'll be growing is probably things like flax and barley and such in Mirandus, wheats and the like. None of the deeds that I have here are growing any of those, because they can only be grown in the plains. And the plains is not the most hospitable area in general. So will you see that? Yeah, exactly. It's pretty nasty, to be honest with you. You get like one shot by death mosquitoes. So, but besides that, will you expect that in Mirandus? I most definitely expect it. Is that existent in Valheim? For sure. With regards to like ingredients for, you know, things like potions and stuff, yeah, that also is quite broad within this game. We're not seeing a lot of it because we didn't gather like a lot of herbs and such, but in some of these later videos, especially going from deed to deed, we do focus in on gathering various roots and herbs and other kind of ingredients for making things.
Well, crop biome tuning would also accomplish the same thing, right? So if there's, let's say, 12 different biomes in Mirandus and you can only grow certain things in very specific biomes, it'll be very, very good for the players. It'll be very good for the economy. So hopefully it'll mimic Valheim in that regard, and it'll be, again, very healthy for the economy.
Yeah, I was saying it would give each biome purpose. It would force people to use those biomes to grow or farm or ranch certain mats.
No, and I was going to say it'll also increase the value of the deeds in those biomes, right? So, if there's a desert, for an example, and they can only grow one of the most valuable herbs, then, players will have to go there to buy them or to do commerce or whatever. So it'll be very healthy.
Cactus spikes for making needles to sew with or something of that nature.
I want cactus juice, magical cactus juice.
Or crazy arrows or spears or something, like giant cactus with giant spines on it, or spikes on them. Continue going through the farmer here. Back past Clothier, right?
Yep. Right through the center of town here and to the barn. And we got a nice little selection of animals in this barn here. We got some chickens and some pigs. Very nice. And Virtual, it doesn't matter where you go, he's always loving the animals. So that's the one consistent thing.
We want free range. We want the best for our ranching.
Hey man, I'm a huge fan of Wagyu, so I'm trying to recreate that with the chickens. If you pet them enough, maybe they'll get better marbling or something.
Well, if it works and increases the quality and yield, I'm all for it. We can pet those them all day if need be. So here we have a meat stand, which is a pretty basic 5x5 butchery, and across the way, milking stand, I guess it would be called in game. In which case you could bring in the animals directly into there and potentially sell some products. We have a few little ranching plots there as well, which are also supplying pigs. And we have Virtual who's grabbing some onions, it looks like.
How many different types of crops are there in Valheim?
There's onions, carrots, turnips, barley, flax, and then there's different trees such as pine, fir, oak, and such. And each one of the crops also have seed versions. So this here are onion seeds. So you grow the seeds, and then you take multiple of those to make actual onions itself. So there's not a huge variety, but a decent amount with a lot of combinations with other materials to produce various foods.
One interesting topic as well, and Jason Hughes, who's one of the lead devs in Mirandus, seemed to be excited by this idea, is optimizing the soil from everything from potentially using horse manure to other options. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how far and how deep they push the details on soil and things like that.
I expect it to make the Valheim crafting and growing and farming system look pretty basic in the end.
These are things that can add over time, right? It's the same thing with a lot of people want to be able to drive their ships around in the oceans, which McCarthy's already said they're not going to do that for at least the initial launch. But, these are all things that can continue further developing and adding more details and depth to over time. So.
And we're coming around the back of the house here. Nice see inside to the kind of the living room area, and we're coming along to these mystery crops that we didn't know the name of last time, and it doesn't look like I get my cursor over them to see what they are this time either, but
I think they're turnip seeds, but I'm not 100%.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure either. It's not onions, so it either has to be carrots or turnips. It's probably turnips. Actually, yeah, I'm pretty sure because these are carrots, so yeah, those have to be turnips. Good call, Gro.
These are the actual turnips here.
Yeah. And coming to the entrance, going around to the side here, and these are onions here. And these are the actual carrots. Yeah, I remember I made the carrots and the carrot seeds on the other side. The carrots are the hardest to actually grow in. Because Virtual decided to remove some onions.
Supposedly eating raw onions increases your testosterone, so I was trying to get a testosterone boost.
Yeah, well, I replaced them because I'm OCD and I couldn't have 3 empty spots here. So, and another 5 hours or 10 hours, however the long the ingrain growing is, the onions, the seeds will be back. So, coming into the house here, looks like we're having a real party around the table here, which looks pretty good. And as we've seen in previous screens, we got a nice open area when you enter into the village of the farmer's house. Yeah, nice little view.
Take a little
there.
breather.
Yeah, a little breather is always good for sure. And we go up the stairs. One thing about all these builds, there's plenty of stairs. There's no
endless
shortage of them.
stairs.
Wait till you see the Archduke, everybody. It's amazing.
The whole video is all stairs. Oh, it's not far from the truth, actually.
I'm still climbing to the top as we do this stream here.
So we have decentral Beebs lying in his bed there. Looks pretty good. And we have a nice little area for the village of the farmer's house with a hot tub and all kinds of trophies around. Nice area, nice views all the way around, 360 degrees. And we'll have take a look. I guess I don't. Oh, there we go. Take a look up and you see the roof here with all the designs. So this, for a single room's roof, this has the most complex roof out of all the builds that I did. So it took me quite a long time to actually build this.
I like the almost like fiery chandelier hanging down the middle there.
Yeah, that's a brazier. I didn't actually make any ventilation for it, but it's high enough up that the smoke from it doesn't actually come down to obstruct the room. So it worked.
No one's dying in their sleep.
I hope that the decorations are another kind of mini economy in terms of buffs and things like that. It'd be really cool. Potentially decorations are NFTs you could find in the wild or buy from other players. So we'll see what they do with that, or maybe it's just completely just decorative, but hoping that it's a little deeper than that.
And now that we've seen the house, we just head on our way out, all the way out, and we head off down through the center of the deed here, the last little glimpse of the area, onwards to our next adventure. And the next adventure from here, oh, well, first we got to make a pit stop to pick up all the linen. Look at all this production, man. We're gonna make a lot of armor and clothing out of that.
I need me a new shirt. Give me a
Yeah,
Supreme
no
shirt.
And we finish off by going out to the dock area, which, considering this is a part of the complex of the Archduke, this would likely be a wharf. And I haven't actually built the entire wharf, pier, dock, and quay yet, simply because we don't have the plot maps of those. Once the accurate plot maps are, all of these docks that you're seeing here will be adjusted to match the plot maps of those deeds within Mirandus as well.
And that's it. Another amazing job indeed, recreation by Aaelim. Again, if you're looking to join the most dominant guild in Mirandus, join mastersofmaterium.com. Go to the website, come to the Discord. We are completely inclusive. So if anybody wants to join, you are welcome. From people that literally do not own anything to people that own deeds. One of our main focuses, but not our only focus, is going to be food. So if you own a hamlet or any type of farming type of assets, make sure you join us because we will be dominating that. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one.